Okay, here on today's video, we're going to talk about WhatRunsWhere, the software. And a website that offers a similar service called Moat. It's at Moat.com. What these software are actually going to be able to do for you as a businessman or woman and potential advertiser or advertiser right now that runs PPC ads on Google, on Google Display Network specifically there, potentially, and what that can do for you to be able to show you how to run a Google Display Network campaign on Google Ads that's productive. What else can be done with those softwares, what it can do, what it can't do, what are the best practices with it, at least as far as that I've experienced doing it in the last 10 plus years for our firm here, working with hundreds of different clients, and explain the kind of the process that I think you, of course, should go through, given that I've kind of made all the mistakes with it, learned this kind of how these softwares work, what is the most beneficial way for you to use it, and take away from this, whether ultimately decide whether or not you probably want to use the software if you're still trying to consider it right now. So anyway, I'll first go on my list here of things to cover. What is the first? What are the software designed to do? Okay, so I just want to start off also in saying with WhatRunsWhere, and if you haven't quite, as a general premise, figured out what this does, you're supposed to be able to. There's software, first of all, like a SpyFu on SpyFu.com, and then SEMrush.com, that through Google search ads, it tells you what ads people that are running. Obviously, mostly people are looking at their competitors, but in general, people running those ads, what they're running for the ad, how often they're running it, what are the potential budgets, so on and so forth. WhatRunsWhere just simply is specifically for display network ads, Google Display Network, but it also can be on different ad networks that'll get you basically on the same type of sites Google Display Network can get you on. And it tells you basically what, again, what ads they're running, how often they're seeming to run them, so on and so forth. Now, Moat at Moat.com, on the other hand, doesn't really give you stats about how often they're running it and so on and so forth like SpyFu.com, but it will show you in free, whereas WhatRunsWhere at the time of watching the video here, I've been doing the video, it's about $300 a month, so it's a pretty penny, but it has lots of useful data there that you can use that you can't get with the Moat.com. With Moat.com, it's mainly just about seeing what ads, banner ads, specifically that different companies or your competitors are running. If you want to get some general ideas, it's basically like the soft or light version of WhatRunsWhere in terms of the things that these softwares are supposed to be able to do for you, and actually what it, the limit, what it can do versus getting the whole thing for yourself. But anyway, what is these software designed to do? So, first of all, it's to rip off the competitors' campaigns. You got, again, like SEMrush, like SpyFu, the general premise here is to be able to see what your competitors are doing with their display campaigns that they're running online and see if you can replicate that. And for the most part, if you see the banner ads, there's all kinds of other tertiary networks where banner ads are run. But for the most part, whatever you see can be done and replicated through Google Display Network in terms of if you see they're running their ad a lot of time, the ad they're running, you can ultimately see what they're offering, so on and so forth, frequency of how they're running their ads, to be able to replicate that on the Google Display Network. And there's thousands of different ways that you can target your ads on Google Display Network that you don't have to necessarily, I don't believe, go on these tertiary ad networks, because I like to use all these different targeting options where you can target by demographic and search intent, what they purchased recently, what sites they were on recently, what site they are on now. And the whole premise of display advertising is to drill down far enough. Your customer is out there. The real question is, can you drill down far enough the targeting to get rid of all the waste, and so you're left with that just core the core list of people that are your customers. Because if you can advertise to them, it's efficient enough that it's profitable, assuming that you have a profitable model of business right now. And so I use all those targeting features, and of course my knowledge to know how to use all those targeting features, which can be layered on top of each other. It can be a certain age, and they must have went to my competitor site in the last 30 days, and they have to basically have they have been interested in a certain other website, a news website in the recent past, and then so it had to be this and this and this. And when you drill down far enough, you get to that core small audience of customers that you are ultimately looking, or prospects are looking to target. So you can rip off the competitors' campaigns if you can kind of see how often these display ads are running, that you're, regardless if it's through Google Display Network or different audience networks out there that get you basically on the same websites that Google Display Network can get you on, maybe not directly or exactly, but close. And you can see the ad, for the big one, first of all, is the ad ideas. So you're looking at your competitors' campaign there, you can see the banner ad itself. What copy are they using, meaning what text? How is the imagery? What's the angle of the ad? Are they focusing on a product discount or a sale? Are they offering, does it look like they're offering, a new product or whatever it is? So there's the design and the angle of the ad, both, that you should pay attention to there. And of course, you can look at all your competitors and see if they're running display network ads at all. Moat doesn't have very good penetration overall as WhatRunsWhere does. So for the most part for this one, WhatRunsWhere is really what you have to rely on if you want to see who's running display ads in my niche, my competitors, my direct competitors. And that's the big one that everybody uses the software for. Most common feature is to see who's actually advertising, because more people in your niche probably search on on search engines like Google, if they're running ads at all, because it takes more sophistication or talent to run display advertising the right way, unless you're a big company, and where you can just basically piss money away and it's not going to turn up any noses there because you barely notice it anyway in terms of the grand scheme of things. But for your small company, if you are that, you're competing against other fairly small companies, and they have to make a profit to stay in business, and they can't just leak money like that. Then you can see your competitors if they're running display network campaigns to see potentially if you should be running, or and ultimately get you one step forward in deciding what is, instead of starting completely from scratch or just using your ideas by themselves, what is the general direction where I should start. And then the other final thing is the market discovery. So of course, there's some of these spy software like AdVault, where you can look at other display network advertising, specifically called native advertising. With those software, you can, mainly the premise is designed to do is to find ads that are running often, so you can specifically just see what is the landing page you're taking people to and what's the offer, and then they'll take those things and they'll just try to replicate the offer themselves. If the campaign's running frequently, of course, you can deduct that it's probably profitable for them. If they've been, more particularly if they've been running in a long period of time, so it tells you that as well. It's not so much what your budget is, but for the most part, if somebody's been running a campaign more than 6 months and it's not a huge company, that campaign probably works for that person and they know it. And at a big budget, they're more likely to have set up tracking to know this stuff. And if it didn't work out of big budget and it's not a huge company, then they're more likely to have went broke in the process. So therefore, the more they spend and the smaller they are, then the longer they do that, the less likely it is that campaign is not to work. So that's the general kind of things you have to think about when it comes to this stuff. But anyway, with like AdVault, and it's also with this WhatRunsWhere, and of course somewhat little bit with Moat, you can go out there and you can just type in certain things. There's sections on WhatRunsWhere, the most, as with Moat, most common ads, new movers, and you can just find new markets to tap into if you're that kind of entrepreneur that just likes to, they're not a person in any one business. They like to get into new things, new technologies, stuff that's so new that there's not an established market yet, but somebody ultimately found a new product to offer that's really hot at the moment, and therefore the advertising's super powerful. You can find it first before anybody else does, or basically second, because you want to be the second guy. Quickly set up a business for it, and then when that business burns out, a couple of years and the competition's really kicked up, then go into something else. They'll use those softwares, and again, it goes back to the same thing. How long is the ads running for? How big a budget? And does the company look like they can afford to lose money or not? And so they'll just use that to find markets. Of course, if you're in a market and you're just going to stay the course, which, by the way, I don't recommend being in a business where you're switching different opportunities. I've seen a lot of people who have done that, and for the most part, long term, of course, you could learn a lot that way. But long term, if you're going to be super rich, you need to figure out how to do one thing better than anybody else, keep reinventing yourself, keep improving, and just get so far ahead of the game and so efficient, nobody can really catch up to you. And just do it in a niche that's not too niche, too small, but not so big that you have huge companies to compete with. Something that's sort of in between, and then just be the number one guy. That most commonly, in terms of people running campaigns that I see get rich, that started from, they didn't start with huge startup funds. They didn't have investors. That's how they did it, and they did everything themselves, and then they started hiring people, and then so on and so forth. So, but anyway, if you find something there, that new market, or you find your competitors are running those ads, you want to look at their ad ideas and the angle of the ad, and from there, that's a good starting point to run your display advertising through Google Display Network or another place, obviously, if you're doing it there, in order to decide what to run starting out. One of the other, of course, things that you can do is click through the ad, see what the landing page is like. That's also obviously important. Sometimes people, they'll send people to a page, which I call a pre-lander, which is an article there, and then they'll have a link to the actual product they want people to buy. Sometimes they send people to the actual product itself. But going into the next thing here, the fly in the ointment. What is it that what's the problem that makes, the premise of what you're supposed to use this software for, to be able to quickly jump into a market? Not so much as that, but like with your competitors, people that clearly are running display advertising and are running the ads enough, but are small enough still to where it looks like they're making money from it, that keeps you from just going in there and like what they try to make it seem like, where you can just copy someone's campaign verbatim, paste it over here for your company, and you got turnkey money, turnkey profit. That is the word remarketing. In other words, so remarketing and what it does to almost make these products useless for their advertised purpose. So since most people are trying to they want to do as little work as possible and just copy their competitors' display campaigns so they don't have to learn all these things, it's very difficult to, not impossible, but you have to read some material to learn how to run a display campaign right, because you have to have, people aren't looking for it. You got to have it's interesting spin on things. It's like having to do outbound calling to sell versus people coming to you. And so remarketing, of course, I'd say probably half of the people that I deal with in general, not huge companies that have like thousands of employees generally, I don't work with those companies, but of the display advertising they do is remarketing. So that it's that being remarketing that's dedicated to people who at least been to the site one time already. And so with that, you have a lot of people running these ads. You can't tell if they're marketing to people who just been to their site already or not. And an ad that works for somebody who has already been to the site before could be a whole different ad that works there that will not work to get a brand new person that hasn't been to your site before. A remarketing ad, they may have a testimonial there. And that works great for somebody who's already been to your site already and is already in market already. Then just market to somebody who may not immediately be in market, which you always want to target people that as much as you can who are already in market as much as possible. But even with that, it's less clear. And so the ad to get somebody interested may not be a testimonial. And that's the main thing I want to point out there. But also, of course, the fact that the remarketing is done, that remarketing ad can be up to 5 times more productive as an ad. Let's say that same ad to somebody is as qualified as possible, but has not been to your site yet. That's why half of people pretty much, if they are doing display advertising now, are doing remarketing. And for me, I'm personally doing remarketing on every single client's campaign we're doing because it matters that much. There's a thing in marketing that says frequency is more important than reach, which means you're going to make more money marketing to the same people multiple times than you're going to be than to market to each person once, and that's it. To a degree, of course, I spend about 10% of our advertising budget on just remarketing because that seems to be kind of the sweet spot. In terms of maximizing return on the first click traffic, or to get people to come to the site the first time, to make those campaigns profitable as a whole, because that's what it's about. It's not about working on its own, but it should be thought about as a full package in order to get your marketing budget to work. So that really muddies the water. In other words, you can't just then use it to find a way to quickly make money. If life was only that easy. So what can it do though? Going on to the next step. What is it actually? What is it good for? The bright side. Frequently used ad ideas are ultimately better than nothing. So what you can do is see if your competitors are running display ads, and you can test what they're doing, and maybe it works in terms of finding new people coming in because they're not using it for remarketing, and you will have something right away. So sometimes you'll get lucky. More than likely it won't, because they're doing some remarketing with it, either at the same time or exclusively, which skews things, and you're not going to have anything there. So more than likely, what I would recommend to you, you can try to copy verbatim what they have, but more so you should look at the ad ideas in terms of the design, the color, the flow, and use those ideas, as well as kind of how they're, whether you're taking people to a page that has information and then a link to a product versus a product itself. That's the kind of stuff more so that I use it for, that you should use it for as well. And you should likely see, I want to say overall in your market, if nobody's running display advertising with these like WhatRunsWhere and you're using it, that's a really bad sign that the market, it's not just any display advertising is going to work for you. And then but it doesn't mean it can't work, because a lot of people really don't put much effort to it and they don't have the skill to do it. So it doesn't mean you can't do it. But if you do see some people doing it, then you probably can get it to work. You can start with the ad ideas there that you have, and you can basically, at the very least, take the ad ideas, use it for remarketing, because that's probably guaranteed to work there, of course, because sometimes a remarketing ad that's good for people who've been to the site before, though, won't be good for new people, and vice versa. So if they were using an ad to get new people in and you're using it for remarketing, well then, even if you're just using it for remarketing there, that may not work. So if you're going to test it out, take their ad, take what they're doing on the landing page, take your inspiration from it, set that part up, test it on new people, test it on remarketing. One of them's probably going to work, and there you go. At least you have half of the equation figured out then. And then maybe from another competitor's campaign through the same software, you can find out another ad, and you'll test that one. Eventually you'll find an ad that works for new traffic and that works for remarketing, because again, they're basically two different animals. Sometimes you can get the same ad to work on both, of course. I want to say it might be 10 to 50% somewhere in there, where but marketing wise, we're not just running the same ad we're using to pull people in. We're running multiple remarketing ads, where we'll give people let's say a Mart, this month only, we're offering all the products in store for 20% off for the holiday Thanksgiving sale. And that gets people which now are targeted to people who are in market, which you can target people who were already on one of our top competitor sites, because you can create a custom audience to Google Display Network for that. So if they're in market, they've been to our competitor sites, for the ones there that we get on that list who haven't purchased yet, or maybe they have purchased but they can purchase again if you will. We'll target them with our ad that gives them a incentive that they're not going to get through the other company, get them to our site, get them to consider it, and then maybe get them to purchase. That same ad on remarketing, a lot of times at least try to use that there, because people that are already been to the site, if they're kind of on the fence, I like to use those, and I'll have a new ad set up for every month to give a new excuse for the same person who is now in market because they've been to our site to get off the fence, if you will, and then purchase. But then I'll still, for remarketing, use a testimonial. We'll talk about our reviews. We'll talk about the features and benefits of the product again, why the product's different than the competition, what are the unique value points of that product or service to kind of, you're going to try to indoctrinate, if you will, the person through repetition, what's better about your product and service, so that over the period of time that they initially get to your site and they purchase from somebody, you've communicated with them the best, and they remember it the most because you were repeating the messages more than anybody else, tactfully, and you end up with a purchase a majority of the time versus over your competitors who do not do this. But anyway, that just a quick refresher on how to do display advertising. If you want a method, the top method that I use in general, you create a funnel like that for your business, you pretty much can't go wrong. But anyway, with all that said, like SpyFu, like SEMrush that I talked about before, it won't build a campaign for you. Just keep that in mind. Do all this stuff. Don't neglect what I said. If you go in with the mindset, though, that I'm going to make this work no matter what, I'm going to use the information that I'm giving to test and test and test until I get it, you'll win. If you go in here expecting too much and it should work right away, most of the time it won't. So it's just a matter of who's got the most grit to be able to stick it out. And I'll throw a quick disclaimer in there as well. With display advertising, it doesn't work near as fast as like a search advertising ad does. So if you're doing that now, keep that in mind up front, that search ads work pretty much right away. Of course, they get more profitable over a 6 to 12 month period of time. When your search ads and the algorithm, Google's ad algorithm's figuring out how to place those ads. A lot of people don't know that as well, but it's especially pronounced there for a display advertising campaign because Google has thousands of data points on their users, and they can find different aspects of what makes a customer once you've marketed to so many with your display ads to where they'll get better. And the usual is I'll have to run a display advertising campaign for 3 to 6 months before it's really profitable at a low budget that I know I'm going to lose, but it's going to make up for itself once the learning process is done that Google has to find through the machine learning algorithm something that's going to work. But in general, though, before you get there, you can look at click-through rates and test the different ads for remarketing, not remarketing. Use the ideas that you find. Start with the landing page because that pretty much, if it works for them, it probably will work for you in some form. If they're not sending them directly to a product page or a service page and they have another intermediary page where they have an article and then a link to it, that's probably first traffic, and that will give you some insight as to whether it's first click traffic or remarketing, and therefore you take that information and then use the ad that they're using for that particular campaign to do a first click campaign, and then use that ad there, and then look at the competitors' ads, and then maybe test out all of your competitors' ads and find out which one has the highest click-through rate. That's the kind of way that you should be going ahead and doing your display advertising strategy and use these software. Just keep in mind as a last note as well, to make money with Google Display Network ads, click-through rate is king. The higher you get a click-through rate on your ads, the lower the cost per click is going to be because they're directly related to each other. So when you use these ad ideas and the angle on the ad, as I mentioned before, what's there on that ad, of course it has to be solid so that and still have a qualified user when they get to your page, otherwise it won't follow through and convert. But having a reason why they should click and why now, you're offering something, you're offering 20% off and you're only offering it this month. That click-through rate on the ad is going to be much higher than if you just said, here's my products, please look at it. Even though they may be in market for those, you'll get a click-through rate that's 2 to 3 times as high as the other way around. And then that's going to get you to pay, instead of 30 cents or 40 cents a click, you're going to now pay 10 cents a click. And that tends to be the type of thing that gets a display advertising campaign, especially one that drives new traffic to work versus not work, is that click-through rate. So you use your ideas to get a high click-through rate. You can find that out fairly quickly within 30 days. Once you get a super high click-through rate closer to the 1% range, you know you have something that will get, and it will reflect fairly quickly, a cost per click that you can then lower the bids to get it near 10%, which you'll have to do that manually. You'll get a very cheap traffic. You get enough of that traffic through your system, as long as you're getting at least some conversions, either purchases or leads, the first, let's say 2 months, then you should know automatically you'll keep getting more and more and more. And at some point, with those initial numbers coming in, you should be able to make money at some point. It might take 6 months, it might take 12 months, but when it works hugely because the algorithm just keeps pouring on more and more and more traffic, and it gets more and more and more profitable. So you could think of it like priming the system. So anyway, that's the general premise of how I run display campaigns and how WhatRunsWhere, how I use it, Moat, where that comes in. Hopefully that helped you. If you have a question about using WhatRunsWhere or Moat, leave it a comment down below. I'll certainly get back to it. I come out with a video like this every day with PPC strategy on it, the way that I do it, PPC strategy for our clients here. You should subscribe, and if you want to be really educated in PPC. You can also go to guaranteeppc.com/blog. I have, if you want step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns the way that I've done it and learned over the last 15 years to guarantee our clients' results, go ahead and check that out. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I wish the best of luck to you using the WhatRunsWhere subscription that you probably or maybe subscribing to or going to subscribe to now, or taking advantage and utilizing the data on Moat that you see, and so that you don't end up using it in an incorrect way that loses you money instead of makes it.